Hello, this is Agent XP, and today we are going to look at some more basic techniques for the Tomb Raider level editor. So we're starting off here with a 8x8 room, and as we saw in the last video, you just drag on the 2D map and then click bound to select the size room that you want. And very simple, just a square room. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to use the F12 shortcut to make some nice grids in the wall, like so. Just press F12 and we immediately have a nicely divided wall. And then what I generally do is I raise the floor by 4. So what you do is you hover over the plus floor button and give a right click, and it will raise the floor by 4, so that's an entire grid. And then I lower the ceiling by 4 as well. So right click on minus, and there we have a room with 3 grids. It's 12 clicks high, so if you look on the floor it's 4 and the ceiling is 16. And if you want to make things a bit easier, you can then lower the room back to 0, so take it down 4 so that you've got some easier dimensions to work with on the floor and ceiling height. So yeah, we have a room that's at 0, it's got a ceiling of 12 high. Now this is the size room that I typically tend to work with in the level editor. I just find it easier because what this means, because you can only have 5 wall grids in the level editor, you now have a spare floor and ceiling grid, which makes, if you want a step on the edge of the room, for example, where you raise the floor by 1 and you have a stepped area, you then have a spare grid to be able to match up the lines, and this can avoid nasty cracks appearing. Now that we've done that and we have our room, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start giving it a little bit of structure. So we're going to start by putting pillars in the corner. This is something I commonly tend to do, like so. So I'm putting in a wall pillar and I'm doing floor plus and minus with the right click so that we get a 4 click high grid on all the pillars, so it matches up nicely with the walls. Right, so the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a water room. This was one of the first things I wanted to know how to do when I started with the level editor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go floor down 1 so that we get a nice little lip on the edge of our pool so that the water is not the same height as the floor. That just tends to look a little bit better. So we've made a little lip in the floor, and one thing that's worth noting with the water room is that or any portal to a lower room, is that you have to make the portal on the floor the lowest point in your room. So if you're wanting to put steps in the room, do it before you make the floor portal. It's a lot easier. So if I want to make the room stepped like so, I'm going to do it before I make my portal, and the portal is now the lowest point in the room, or it will be the lowest point in the room, and you can see now the room has a full height of -2. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to want to select, just click and drag the area where we want to put our pool, and I am going to click on New Down. And I am going to select the height that I want it now, and I'm going to say 8 because that's quite a nice height for a pool. It's not too deep, and yet it will give Lara a bit of room to swim around. So we're going to go OK, and this has made us a new lower room. So if we turn on the draw doors option and we tilt the room up, we can see the room above. So what this has done is created a room the same size as the room above. Now we don't necessarily want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all around the edges and I'm going to press wall. So this is going to make the corners of the room smaller, and it's going to give us a room that's the size that we want. However, technically, if you set this room to water, the editor will still think that those walled off areas are water, so this can sometimes cause problems with the room above. Sometimes you can get bits where if you've got a low bit of floor, you will get this weird sort of wavy effect as if it's water when it's not. So the best thing to do now is to delete the portal, and unless you might want to utilise some of this space for an underwater tunnel, for example, which we could do. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave one side of the room. We're going to select the one side of the wall. You see here a red box that I've selected. I'm going to click on bound. And now what I need to do is select my previous room. And what I'm going to need to do is put the door back in. You can't resize a room with portals, that is why I deleted the door. So in this room we are now going to use the handy F12 shortcut, which will give us a stripe on the wall. It doesn't do it for bits that you've assigned as a wall, unfortunately you have to do that manually. You could select the wall and press F11 and that will do it. And what I'm now going to do is I am going to select an area, press on wall, and that's going to give us a little sort of alcove here. We don't necessarily want it that height. I'm going to lower the floor and then lower the ceiling, and that's going to give us a little corridor underwater, which we can connect to another room if we want to. That is how you create a new lower room using TRNG. But if you are using the original TRLE, not TRNG, then the process is a little more involved. We don't have that new up, new down and tunnel room option, so we're going to have to do things the old-fashioned way. And that is partly why it's important to note what height your floor and ceiling levels are on the little display at the bottom of the screen here. That is why you're going to need to pay attention to those numbers. So as we saw earlier, the floor is -2. So what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to pick an empty room from the list. And we're going to see that it's massive. We don't want that, so we're going to rebound the room like so. In fact, how big was I making my floor area? We want it 4x4. Cool. So we're going to go 4x4, draw our little square on the map, click bound. That means it's the right size, but it's the wrong height. So we want it about 8 clicks high, as the previous example showed. We're going to want to go floor up and ceiling down until we have a room of 8 clicks high, like so. But if we look down here on the display, we will see that the floor and the ceiling are the wrong heights to match up to the room that we were looking at earlier. So if we look back at our main room, the floor is -2. So what we're going to want to do is select the water room again, and we're going to use the room plus and minus options. And we're going to take the room so that the ceiling is -2. There we go. It will go down on the map, but don't worry, next time you reselect the room, it will be the right height again. So we've now put this at the right height. So what we need to do now is manually drag the room into place, put it in the center of the room that we've just made. And because of the shape of this room, it's a lot easier to see where the center is and where we're going to need to make the portal. So what we're going to do now is select the square again, and we're going to click on door, and that is going to create the portal between the two rooms. And we can click on draw doors and we can see our upper room like so. So that is how you create the portal in the original TRLE, and it's the same for creating corridors as well. So this is a lower room portal because we're going to make it into a water room, but if you wanted to do a corridor off to the side of the room, it would be the same principle. You would need to check the heights of the rooms manually and line them up next to each other. So that is currently just a lower room. So if we want to make it water, what we do is we go into the room, and on this little panel here under the 2D room view, it's got an option which says normal. We click on that and it changes to water. Now the little number next to it signifies the waviness of the water. So if you want calm water, keep pressing it until it goes to 1. That will mean that the surface of the water is nice and flat, so if you want to put a lily pad object or something on it, you won't get a wavy water surface. So for a small pool like this, you quite possibly want to use 1 or 2, which will give a slight wave to the surface. But if you, for example, are building C, then you're going to want to have it at 4, which means it's very wavy. But for this, we're going to set it back to 2, and we're going to go into the upper room. So that has now created a water room, and water rooms have to be created by creating a portal. So if I was to set the room to water, this entire room would be water. There's no way of having a portion of one room that is water. It has to be a separate room. That is how the editor works. So we have our pool and we've set it to water, but currently there's no definition on the surface of the water. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start placing some textures in this area, and I'm just going to do a really quick hash of this. I'm going to select, where is the sand texture, just plain sand. I'm going to do the quick texture floor option, turn on face edit, and we can see that the floor is now sand. We are also going to select the pit, so the room, right click to go through it. We're in the pool room, and I'm going to do a quick texture on the walls. So I'm going to select stone, I'm going to go texture walls, I'm going to select the darker colour sand and texture floor, and there we have it. We need to just right click to select texture. So if you right click anywhere on a texture in the map, it will select the texture for you. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to quickly drag the ceiling area, and that is textured. And I'm going to select another texture here, and we're going to click and drag along the edges of the pool so that that is textured as well. Right, so we have our water room, but if you loaded this up in game, it would be kind of weird because there is nothing to define the change from a normal room to a water room. So what we're going to need to do in order to make it look like water is we're going to need to select the portal, so you get a little green box around the portal, and then we need to use these toggle opacity options. So now for water, you want Lara to be able to pass through the surface of the water, so we're going to select toggle opacity 2. And this way it gives us these grid squares on the surface of the water. So we come down here and we have a couple of water options that we can use, water textures. I'm going to use this one. And what we're going to want to do is select transparent and double-sided. So that means it's transparent, you can see through it, and also you can see it from both sides of the water. So if Lara's underwater, she can still see the surface of the water from beneath. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to right click and drag across the surface of the pool, and boom, there we have it. That now looks like a pool of water. We've applied a texture to the surface of the pool. Click on the pool and right click to go under the water, and you can see that it's visible from both sides. But there's one more thing that we kind of need to do in order to make this look like it's a water room, and that is we need to give it a different colour lighting. I tend to assign water rooms as a sort of bluey colour. Blue or green works, either works, and I'm going to select quite a dark colour. Oh, we're going to turn lighting on. We're going to right click on the lighting panel and going to turn it quite a dark colour blue. Now that's a little bit too blue. If we look down here on the lighting controls, we'll see that blue is 48 and the other two are 0. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to bring the green up by 1, and I'm going to want to lower the blue by 1. So I find quite a good starting value for water is 16 and 32, and it's relatively quick and easy to get that. So we are also going to want to place a sun bulb. I'm going to turn off face edit so I don't get any textures messed up. We're going to place the sun bulb, turn lighting back on, and click the sun bulb. And I'm going to pick a slightly more greeny colour for the sun bulb. So one of these values here I tend to use. I'm going to try that one, and that looks quite cool. Now the thing to remember with water is that it always looks brighter underwater in game than it does in the editor. So this won't look quite as dark in game, this will look brighter, and that is just the way that the level editor renders the underwater effects, which you can turn off if you really hate them, but we'll go into that maybe in a more advanced tutorial, but for now it's worth remembering that the standard TRLE water will have a sort of shimmering effect on screen, and it always does that in a water room by default. So that's cool. That is not going to look as dark as that when we go into game, and that immediately looks like you have a pool of water there. So we're going to continue working on this room, and I'm going to add in a few more architectural details. So I'm going to turn off face edit, turn off the transparent and double-sided options, and we're just going to start adding in a few details in the architecture of the room. And you can do this by lowering the ceiling, etc. And we probably need to go into slopes in more detail in another episode, but for this I'm just going to show you some very basic stuff. So let's see here, I'm going to put in some more pillars. Because we left some spare wall grids, we have the option to do this, and we can match up our steps quite nicely. Cool. We've added in some more detail there. This is still a very, very simple room. I am going to do a bit of quick texturing on the walls. Like so. I'm being quite sloppy here. I'm not trying to make this look particularly good. We can just vary the wall a little bit. What's a good texture I could use on that? Maybe that? No, that's a bit too garish. We'll use this one maybe. That's good. You can texture a room quite quickly. You can use the shortcut that I showed you as well if you want to. So the texture walls, etc. Okay, this isn't taking us very long. We only need a simple room for the purpose of this video. I'm going to use the shortcut on the ceiling. I'm going to select the transparent texture and go texture ceiling. And that way the horizon will be visible through that texture, because we only have a few small places where we need to not have the horizon showing through, and that's just the bits that I lowered. So we want that as brick, and then we want a bit on the top that's visible. Right, so this room has no lighting. We're going to add some lighting. First of all, turn off face edit, place a sun bulb, raise it up, turn lighting back on, and that looks horrible. Right, we're going to deselect the sun bulb. We're going to set the ambience of the room to a darker colour, so I'm going to right click on the grey one. There we are, that's a bit darker. Select the sun bulb. We are going to select a nice warm colour, like so. That's a sort of evening glow, sunny glow. And what I tend to like to do is that when we have a pool of water, I'm going to place a light bulb over it, sort of in the middle, as much in the middle as you can get. And I like to select a sort of bluey colour, because that can sort of give an illusion of the water reflecting into the room a bit. I know water isn't necessarily that colour in real life, but this is editor we're talking about, not real life, so that can often give a nice impression. And you probably don't need the output to be as big as 5. We're going to turn it down to 4, I think. I'm going to have a bluey. No, that's too bluey. What colour? That's better. We can do that. That looks nice. And yeah, that's a simple room. What I am now going to do is I'm now going to show you how to make a simple portal with a trigger for a door. So off one of these sections we are going to make a door into another room. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to select the bit of wall where we want to make the door, and I'm going to click on New Tunnel Room, and this will allow you to select how big you want the room. So we want it, say, 4 long, and we're going to make it 8 high. That is going to make us a nice little corridor. And here we have it. Here's the corridor. For some reason it messes up the height, so if I turn on Draw Doors, you can see it doesn't line up nicely with the other room. It's made it fall higher. So to correct that, what we want to do is select room down and click it 4 times. And we have the corridor is now nicely lined up to the other room. So what we're going to want to do in here is use the wall grids. I'm just going to do them manually, because if you press F12 when there's a door in the room, it messes up the door. It puts a grid across the door as well, and we don't really want that, so it's easier to just do it manually, and it's only a small room anyway. Cool. Now we need to just quickly apply some textures so that we can see what we're doing in this room. I'm just going to click texture wall, texture floor, make the ceiling that texture as well. And here we have our little corridor room, lighting. And the nice thing about new tunnel room, or new up and new down, is if you've already set the lighting in your starting room, it will automatically select the ambience of the lighting to match that room, which is a really nice feature. So all we have to do is we have to place a sun bulb in here as well. And that, by placing a sun bulb, it will sort of bring the room to life a bit, and it will mean that the lighting on Lara is nice and smooth when she goes in the room. Cool, there we have it. We have our nice little corridor room, and now what we need to do is we need to select some doors. So if we go to our objects panel and we scroll down, underneath the puzzles and switches you generally find doors. So we're going to select door type 1. Let's just go and see what that is. I don't actually know what these doors are. So what I'm actually going to do here, is I'm going to use this door because I know how this door behaves. So this is 4 clicks high. Now what we generally need to do with doors for them to work properly is you need to position them adjacent to a portal, because otherwise you'll get this weird invisible block behind it and you'll never quite know which side that's going to appear. So if it's on the wrong side of the door, Lara can potentially walk into this invisible collision square. So we're going to rotate the door and we're going to put it adjacent to the portal. But as you can see, that it's the wrong height. So what we're going to need to do is we are going to need to lower the ceiling, like so. And what I'm going to do, because the door is only 1 wide, we could put 2 doors, but if we use the same type of door twice, they're going to open in the wrong way. So one's going to go out, one's going to go in. If you want a double door portal, you ideally need 2 double doors that are designed to work together. You can sort of make a hash of using the same type of door if you want, but it's easier to just have 1 for the sake of this tutorial. So I'm going to make that a wall, and we are going to delete that door, and I'm just going to redo the door on 1 square because it's a single door. So I'm going to adjust the wall line to match, and if we turn on all doors, we'll be able to see our door there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the square next to the door. The last thing we selected was the door, so it says in the trigger bar here, trigger for door TY. And that will be the door we just placed. If you want to make sure, go back into that other room and you click on that door. So we want the trigger for this door to be in this big room that we just made, the main room. So I'm going to select the door, make sure the door is the last thing you selected, go back into this room, or you can select it by using your room panel here. I'm going to click on the square next to the door, and I'm going to press the pink trigger button. And that is going to make a trigger for that door on that tile. If Lara walks on that tile, that will make a trigger for the door. But we don't really want to make it as easy as that, do we? We don't just want Lara stepping on a tile and the door opening. We want to put either a switch or a key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the inventory here, and I'm going to select my switches. So I have a couple of different types. This switch type 1 requires a little bit more involved setup, so what we're going to do is I'm going to select this switch type 2, which is a button, and we are going to put that next to the door, like so. So once again, we want to make sure that that switch is the last thing that we selected. Then I'm going to click on the floor on the tile that we want to use. You can also use the 2D minimap here if you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the trigger where it says trigger for switch, and this is going to bring up my trigger menu. So what I'm going to do here, because it's a switch we're triggering, I'm going to go to the trigger type activation mode section. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to give me a few options, and I'm going to select switch so that it has a switch trigger on it. And we're going to go OK, and then we're going to press the trigger button again. And then if you go to the 2D minimap and click on that tile, we will see here we have switch, trigger for switch, and we have trigger for door. And make sure it's switch for switch, oh it's gone off, there we go. Switch 0 for switch type 2. And that means that is correctly set up. So now when Lara pushes the button, the door should open. And if she just walks on the tile without pressing the button, the door will not open. Now we do need to be careful when we're placing switches like this, because for each switch type there are several animation options, and we'll potentially look at that in future videos, but you need to make sure that Lara has the right animation type selected for the type of switch that you're using. Next, we are going to look at how to create a similar corridor room, but for the door on this corridor, we're going to trigger it using a puzzle object instead of a switch. So we're going to make a quick, nifty copy of the hallway that we have just made. So I'm going to click and drag and select the entire room, and we're going to click copy to create an exact copy of the room that we've just made. And I'm going to select the area where the door needs to be, that's the bit without the green pillar, and I'm going to press on the black door option, and that is going to create a portal into our main room. Turn on draw doors and you can see the connection, and we'll just go back into our corridor. Everything gets duplicated aside from objects, so the geometry of the room will get duplicated but objects won't. So you'll have to add a quick sun bulb in here as well. Set it to the right colour, or a right colour. And we're now going to put a door object onto that portal. So we're just going to reselect our door. Where is it? Here it is. Put it in place, like so. And we are going to set the trigger for the door next to the door. And one thing to bear in mind is that it's very difficult in the editor to work out which direction the door is actually going to open, and I always find this is a process of trial and error. I never remember which way a door opens. So we've got one on one side, i.e. we've got one inside the corridor facing outwards, and we have got this one in the main room facing inwards, and when we go to test it in game we can see which one opens the correct way, and then we can have them both the same. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find a puzzle hole, like so. We're going to scroll through and find a suitable one. That looks good, we're going to use that one. We're going to place it on the map. You can't really see anything, and this might be because it's rotated the wrong way, because the back of puzzle holes tend to be transparent. So we're going to scroll around, we can now see it. I'm going to rotate it so that it's in place, and there it is adjacent to the door. So now we have that selected, we are going to select the trigger button again, and we're going to scroll down on the trigger type activation mode menu, and we're going to select the key option this time, and we're going to go OK. We're going to click on the tile, and we are going to place key for puzzle hole, and that is cool. We have that there. We have key for puzzle hole if we click on the trigger on the 2D map, key for puzzle hole, and trigger for door type 3. Just double check that. That's all set up. So we need the normal door trigger and we need the trigger for the key for the puzzle hole. Now we need to place the puzzle object somewhere in the room so that Lara can actually pick it up and use it. So we're going to find the corresponding puzzle item, that's puzzle item 5. We're going to go down into the pool of water, and I'm going to pop it in there. And if I turn on lighting, we can see that that's going to stand out rather a lot. So I'm going to select the item, make sure the item's selected, and then I'm going to click on a colour. So I'm going to make it a bit more greeny so that it doesn't look out of place under the water. And there we have it. We should have a door that is going to be triggered by placing a puzzle item in a hole next to it. So there we have it. We have a simple room with a pool of water and 2 doors that we can open. So I am going to go and output my WAD, and I will see you in game for a brief test. Oh, and before we do that, we're going to make sure that we have Lara placed in the room, because otherwise we're going to get some issues. So I'm going to select Lara from my object list, and I'm going to place her in the corner of the room and rotate her so that she's facing the right way. Cool. I will now see you in game. So here we have Lara in the room, and you can see the horizon there, the transparent textures have worked. And here we have our pool of water. Now the water texture is not animating, and that is something that we can sort out in a later video. But for now we have a pool of water and we can dive in and swim around. And we can go in and pick up our puzzle object, like so. And swim to the edge and climb out as normal. Right, so now we're going to see if our door trigger works. So we step on it, it doesn't open. Here we have our door. And we're going to go up to the puzzle hole and place it like so. It's called load, but once again that is something to be sorted out in a later video. And the door opens. So that is how you create a portal with a door and a puzzle object. Now we're going to go and see if the button works. Ah yes, the animation is missing and the door opens the wrong way. But those are 2 things that can be fixed. But the door still works as a door, and you get the basic principle of how to set up a button and a door. So for the button you use a switch trigger, and for the puzzle object you use a key trigger, and both of them function as doors. So that is the end of this. Another very simple tutorial showing you the very basics of the level editor. So we've looked at how to create water rooms, and we've looked at how to create a simple door trigger. Now in future videos I plan to show you more on the lines of how to make rooms look nice. So we haven't really tried to make this room nice. It's a very, very simple box of a room. It's just designed to help you get started with some of the basics. And like I said, in further videos I plan to do some, shall we say, landscaping in the level editor. So I'm going to try and show you how to make rooms look pretty. So that's it for this video. We've looked at how to make a water room and how to place a very simple door trigger. So if you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, and let me know in the comments anything you'd like to see in future videos. This is Agent XP, and thank you for watching. TTFN.